the average price at the time was £587. Mellor Designs medical gowns cost £12.64, so a little over twice the going rate. Were you aware of that?
No.
Yeah. Is it possible, I know you've given your interpretation of each of these emails, that there was pressure felt by those that didn't interpret those emails in the way that you have this afternoon to enter into a contract with Mr. Mellor, contrary to commercial advice or the going rate? Is that a possibility?
No.
This is an email dated the 3rd of April. I've just spoken to David Mellor, brackets, a good friend of Michael Gove, who was asked to source PP3 masks in China. He's managed to do so and has been given a verbal commitment of 40 million masks. This, as you'll see below, has come through the MOD, not sure why. He now has an urgent order to secure 5 million in Holland and the balance in China. Now, you would say, would you, Mr. Gove, that the reference to Mr. Mellor being a good friend of yours is to signal that any form of favouritism must be scrupulously avoided? Is that why it's included in the email?
Well, I don't know why Andrew, who's someone for whom I have the highest regard, would have put that in. It may have been to close the loop or to provide additional information. I think there's a difference between my private office, which would act as the chaser, and would have been aware of all the connections or relationships that I might have had with anyone who was seeking to land a contract, and Andrew, who was enlisted by DHSC to deliberately seek out the type of people who might be able to provide PPE.
On the face of it, Mr. Gove, the mere inclusion of the reference without the caveat or the caution that you suggest would lead one to assume that this is an offer that we ought to take particularly seriously because of the friendship or the good friendship that this person making this offer has to Michael Gove. Yes?
That is one inference.
Let's have a look at the next email in the chain. It's INQ 000534 695. It's dated the following day. It's Mr. Canduff to the Cabinet Office. We heard from Mr. Canduff last week.
Yeah.
He says this: there's been multiple conversations with Mr. Mellor, which are ongoing, but he keeps separately contacting private officers, even while conversations with our team are continuing. Unfortunately, that means he's generating a lot of noise in the system. Please do not mention that validation check to him or anyone else. If he contacts either of you again, please direct him to this mailbox. Going through multiple routes is actually slowing things, as we need to respond to each of the points of contact. It's not speeding them up. This is the third separate inquiry I've received about Mr. Mellor since yesterday evening. Now, slightly different point here, but we heard last week about noise, about distractions. This was consuming quite a lot of bandwidth amongst those whose responsibility it was to triage offers. It's possible that there comes a point where the chasing, the request for feedbacks, the chivying interferes with the day job.
Yes, I think that's entirely fair.
Yeah, and that is the anxiety, the concern that is here being expressed, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's one that I expressed myself.
All right. It's one of the reasons, presumably, why you would not advocate for the reinstatement of a VIP lane in the form it took during the pandemic.
Well, actually, I would not advocate for a VIP lane, but the existence of a VIP lane means that some of those who have access to significant networks and can source goods abroad can be dealt with in a way that would be different from a well-meaning individual who did not have that network.
It's not the only way to achieve it, though, is it?
It is not the only way to achieve it, no.
Let's move
to a possibility, Mr. Gove. Supposing you had a system whereby when the team looked at an offer, you had red, amber, green. So red would be the sweet little lady who wanted to knit a mask. Green would be the possible James Dyson type, a manufacturer who could produce at speed and in quantity. And then in the middle you have possible can produce it, but not too sure. Would that be the kind of prioritisation system that you would think could work?
Yes, my lady, and I think that in some of the evidence that the inquiry has heard, I can't remember which witness, it may have been Jonathan Marin, made the point that if, for example, Amazon offers to help, I mean, obviously there are all sorts of other questions about Amazon, you can be fairly certain that they will have the capacity to provide logistics support in the same way as a businessman who operates in the Far East and sources items of clothing and other garments is more likely, inevitably so, more likely to be able to provide PPE than a football agent.
Mr. Gove, let's move on through the email exchanges to INQ 000533988. It's 10 days later, 14th of April 2020. Paul Bywater to Max Cairnduff. There we are. Second paragraph. David wants to. We'll start at the. David wants to speak to me today. I don't have a problem speaking to him whilst on leave, but I wanted to check on what line I should take on his existing gown officers. We know he has Michael Gove's ear. Now, pausing there for a moment, do you think that phrase that's used is a caution against offering any form of favouritism to David Mellor, or is the opposite? Is suggesting that this person should receive preferential treatment on account of his relationship, the influence that he can have with Michael Gove, on a normal reading of those words?
No, I think it's something else. I think that Max here is acknowledging that these offers have been in triage for almost 2 weeks, and judging by, I don't know whose email, they had dropped through the cracks. So it would appear to be the case that, and this is no criticism of Max or any of the team, it would appear to be the case that there had been a system snafu. And Max entirely understandably said, or the person emailing Max says, I don't want to jump on a call when I know that gowns, aprons are a priority, and simply say that I can't tell him anything further. I will, if that is your advice, but we all know that private officers will be following that call up fairly quickly with some urgent chasing for clarity. So the key thing there, to my mind, is concern that a provider, in this case Mr. Mellor, but it could have been any provider, had not been treated with the efficiency that one would want at the apex of efficiency, as it were, and that if it was the case that it got back to me, I might say, bloody hell, irrespective of who the person making the offer was, why is it that anyone providing something that we need desperately is not being dealt with in this way? Had it been any other provider who had contacted me and who had said there is a flaw in the system, as a number did, then I would have pursued that energetically in order to ensure that the system worked.
All right, Mr. Gove, those are two competing interpretations of this email. I'm going to move on because I'm conscious of time. Could we have INQ 000534834? It's an email from Lord Feldman to Andy Wood, in which Lord Bethel is CC'd. I've just spoken to David Mellor, and once again, a good friend of Michael Gove, who has asked us. So this is actually the email we looked at earlier.
Yeah.
The question here. Let's just. Can we scroll up to the top of it now? Because I don't think we. It says, are you able to handle this? Please confirm. It seems a terrific opportunity. And the response that Andy Wood gives is, up the top, thank you. We are on this one with Bruce and team. The price is very high, even in today's market. So we'll need extra handling. You weren't involved in discussions about price, were you? Did you know that the price being asked by Mr. Mellor was approximately twice the going rate at the time? Did you know that?
I did not know that.
There are two sources to establish that. Well, three. You can either take it from me, Mr. Gove. Mr. Mellor ended up entering into a contract through Mellor Designs worth £164 million. Were you aware of that?
Subsequently, yes.
Yeah. And were you aware that within that contract, the average price for medical gowns was £5.87? Sorry, the average price at the time was £5.87, but Mr. Mellor Designs medical gowns cost £12.64, so a little over twice the going rate. Were you aware of that?
No.
Yeah. Is it possible, I know you've given your interpretation of each of these emails, that there was pressure felt by those that didn't interpret those emails in the way that you have this afternoon to enter into a contract with Mr. Mellor, contrary to commercial advice or the going rate? Is that a possibility?
No.
Why would it not be a possibility?
Because I can't imagine for any reason Mr. Wood or anyone else choosing to place a contract on that basis. So those decisions over the issuance of contracts were matters for officials, not for politicians. And also, I would say that, again, in the work that's been done by the National Audit Office and also by Nigel Boardman, they make it clear that those decisions were taken autonomously.
Mr. Gove, finally, in your reflections section, you say the high priority lane was not the initiative of ministers, it was the idea of officials.
Yes.
You don't know where it originates, do you?
I don't know.
So you're not really able to state that with such clarity in your statement, are you?
Well, I don't know of any minister who, I asked repeatedly, I don't know of any minister who initiated it, no.
But I mean, it's never too late to correct an error. Are these two sentences baseless? We're going to look at this with other witnesses, Mr. Gove. The high priority lane was not the initiative of ministers. It was the idea of officials. You simply don't know whether that's correct or incorrect, do you?
To the best of my knowledge, I do, yeah.
What is the basis for you saying that it is officials that came up with the idea?
That's what I was told.
By whom?
By the officials with whom I was working in order to ensure that my evidence could be consistent with the high standards the inquiry requires.